Let's talk about the recent IPO. TeamLease was a company that got listed just a few days back. It's done well. It's up about 10% from that level. The management is now joining us live from Bangalore studio. Ma'am, thank you so much for taking out time for us. Could you first just explain the business for us? What does TeamLease do? Recently, there has been a lot of initiating coverage. IDFC has initiated coverage with an outperform. Can you first just start with the business and what essentially the company does and what are the growth levers going ahead?
So ours is a business which is aligned towards the demographic dividend. So essentially for it to be a dividend, I think the country needs to focus around employment, employability and education, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to innovate at the intersection of employment, employability and education. So a large part of our business has been staffing. So almost 97% of our business comes from staffing. Now what essentially is staffing? What we do is that there are a lot of organizations out there, big, large multinational Indian business houses who have short-term requirement or project-based requirement which helps them expand into the market. So for such requirements, they typically look at options through which they can hire people for fixed durations on the roles of staffing companies like us, but operationally they are responsible to these companies. And honestly, it's a win-win situation because organizations have a lot of requirements which are short-term, which are peak-based in nature, and they get just-in-time people to come in and supplement the workforce. It helps the candidates out there as well because typically when people are looking for candidates on a temp basis, they do not usually have very high hiring standards, and they tend to get an opportunity to come and work in these organizations, get to learn. So it becomes a perfect win-win situation for everyone. So staffing essentially is that, but at the moment we are working with diverse portfolio of industries and sectors. We work with almost over 60 different kinds of industries. There is no you can say concentration of any specific industry at this point of time. We have about 109,000 temps at this point of time spread across 1,200 odd customers. So 97% of our business, of course, comes through that, and there are about 3% comes from what we call the different HR services. These are fairly new initiatives, however, they are high-margin businesses. Things like compliance consulting business, which is essentially labor law consulting. It's complex, and organization usually seeks support to be able to manage it and to be able to stay compliant. We have something called NetApp, which is probably going to be the world's largest apprenticeship program. This enables organizations to deploy apprentices in their offices, in their premises. It helps them build a future pipeline, talent pipeline, in a very efficient manner, in a manner by which it doesn't break the bank for them, and it also enables kids to learn on the job. We have a training business which is focused around institutional training, which is on enterprise solutions. We have a permanent recruitment business which is focused around hiring people at the entry level and up to middle level. So in a nutshell, that's what we do and what we are offering at this point of time.
Right. Can you just talk about your return on capital invested? It is quite healthy, 70-75% versus
Yes.
global peers at 10-12%. What sort of a model do you have?
We have been asset light completely throughout. Also, if you know, we've not done, our entire growth has been organic in nature. And I think from that perspective, we managed to have a very attractive ROCE, you can say. And frugality in terms of capital is one of our fundamentals, and we've believed in, and I think it shows up in our numbers.
Right. As far as margins are concerned, what are the current gross margins, and do you expect that to increase, because that's the key trigger markets are looking for?
Of course. So I think we have showcased our ability to be able to improve margins. Of course, it is about 1.5% right now, and while I am not going to give a guidance at this point of time into the future, we believe that we're very confident that this is going to increase steadily into the future. there is a huge addressable market, there is an opportunity, and we stay true to that opportunity. And most of the margin increase would be coming from through economies of scale, I think, which we demonstrated again over the last 5 years. And I think scale is essentially going to come in through our ability to execute, through the kind of talent that we hire, the kind of processes that we bring into place, and of course, there's going to be a continued focus on technology, which we've been always very focused on. Then, of course, we are also looking at getting into the verticalization. So there will be a lot of specialization that we are looking to do into the future. IT staffing is going to be one such area, hospitality, healthcare. So which we believe is going to contribute significantly because these are typically high margin businesses. And of course, the different HR services. Now, all of them, pretty much we've absorbed the entire fixed cost in all these business, and we're expecting steady growth in these businesses, which is going to directly go and contribute to our margins.
Right. Can you just tell us how will the growth in volumes come in? And whenever it comes in, it is a very high operating leverage business, so margins would tend to increase faster?
Yeah, I think that's what I think over the last few years we've been investing heavily. I mean, we chose to invest heavily in preparation for scale. And we are witnessing in any case significant labor transformation. Incidentally, 29% of our entire workforce are outsourced, and out of that, only 1% are through any kind of formal engagement, which means large part of the outsourced employees are deployed to some informal form of employment or the other. And we believe staffing in this country at this point of time is going through a structural phase where essentially we will see, we are already seeing, we will witness large-scale movement from the informal sector to the formal sector. And the opportunity is huge. At this point of time, we're talking about 1% of 129 million people. So I think volumes, of course, going to be a kicker, and the opportunity exists for us to grow in that direction.
Right. You earlier also mentioned about the high-yielding sectors. So, healthcare, IT, and hospitality. How are we looking to grow there?
Yeah.
Are the yields over there very high because of very high attrition rates?
Of course, of course. No, I think the way these businesses are run, typically the gross margins in this business are anywhere between 12 to 18% with an EBITDA margin of close to 8% to 10%. And hence, these are attractive segments which we are looking at, we are very keen to get into at this point of time.
Right. As far as employment or employment generation is concerned, the major lever would come in only if there are fresh jobs creation, because that will give you the extra volume, the extra lever. So are you seeing any green shoots in the economy? Has the economy, economy has to grow for you to grow particularly very fast?
I think, of course, there are 5 different kinds of labor market transformations which were required, and we believe they are happening. First and foremost, I think manufacturing needed to scale up, and we believe, and manufacturing needed to contribute to greater job creation. We believe the Make in India campaign is in that direction, and we are noticing and we are seeing perceptible difference in terms of what's happening in terms of employment per se. We may not see the entire impact of it immediately, but there are definite indicators that it's in the right direction. Skill India, again, finally we need to be able to make our kids employable to be able to meet up with the demand that might get generated through the various campaigns that are going on. I think again that's also in the right direction. I think the various initiatives of Digital India, the various initiatives of actually having focus around skills to the creation of the Ministry of Skills are moves which tell us that that there is a positive outlook out there. In terms of what is happening, the feedback that we receive, I mean, what we understand from different corporates, there is a definite positive outlook overall which is building up. And there is interest, I mean, there are increasing interest of investors from outside of the country to come into India. And I mean, you've heard about the big, large manufacturing giants who trying to set base in India. Foxconn, incidentally, is one such. So we are seeing many such moves in the positive direction, and we believe that it's a positive sign. But more importantly, like I mentioned earlier, structural phase. We already have got 128 million people who are engaged in some form of informal employment or the other. So leave aside Make in India, leave aside Skill India. If through just making some changes in the regulatory environment, we are able to gradually move them from informal sector to formal sector, in itself is a huge demand that would get created for staffing per se. And most of this would be driven, I mean, the opportunity would be driven clearly because of the three things. The regulatory context, essentially. Besides whatever is happening around reform, I think we are noticing that there is greater awareness about being compliant. And there is also an increased level of supervision, or you can say scrutiny, which is coming into play when it comes to compliance per se. I mean, there are incidents which have happened. I mean, whether freak incidents which have happened in the case of the likes of Maruti or the others, I think all of this has actually essentially prompted employers to be very careful about the kind of staffing organizations or so-called contractors that they engage with. I think that's one. That also has triggered customer preference, and more organizations themselves are reaching out to us wanting to look at formal staffing as an option. And thirdly, I think the entire employment relationship per se in the country, you know, there is one extreme of the Uberization of the workforce and the other extreme where people are looking at lifetime employment. We believe that we are somehow there is a convergence happening somewhere in the middle. And that's exactly where an option like ours, which is flexible, which is win-win for all concerned, is emerging. And that's exactly the opportunity.
Right, you know, but the main growth or the main lever would come in only when there is a very big investment, and you know they like want 100 people together or 200 people together. You know, big offices come and launch into India. That's the time when TeamLease will see the best of the year.
No, I don't think we're looking at a big bang of that sort. We believe that gradual transformation is already happening in the country. There are different sectors which were highly engaging in formal employment, have already started moving in the direction of formal employment. There are new sectors emerging. For example, like essentially we at TeamLease, we believe we are the waiter in the restaurant. We're not essentially the chef. We have built capabilities to be able to absorb any change that are happening in the economy, any evolution of an industry, any need that emerges. We should be able to tap into it, deliver as quick as possible and as efficiently as possible. 2 years back, if somebody asked me whether e-commerce would be a viable section, well, maybe we were not really sure. Today, e-commerce is a huge contributor to staffing per se, and so on and so forth. You will see emergence of industries over the next few years. We need to be, as an organization, and we believe as an organization we are prepared, because such transformations have been happening and will continue to happen, and hence we don't need a big bang moment. I mean, if it happens, great. It's an added bonus, but I think we can, as is, we can sustain the kind of growth that we've been seeing.
Right, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking out time for us. I hope to see you again once you declare your Q4 numbers quite soon. That was a new listing talking about the business and how essentially growth would come. We're taking a break. We're coming